Welcome to Beyond the OR with Dr. Kevin Brenner. I'm a board-certified plastic surgeon in Beverly Hills. I want to take you beyond my world of plastic surgery, diving deep into exciting hot topics and delving even deeper into compelling characters that I've met along the way. We'll be talking with attorneys, actors, comedy writers, Navy SEALs, and many other fascinating and inspiring people with truly intriguing stories to share. So let's jump right in. Hi guys, welcome to the show. Today we have a great show, and I wanted to welcome very warmly Stefan and Stella Tetenbaum, who are some of the force behind the Dark Secrets of Playboy, which Stefan wrote, which was an inspiration for the A&E series about the Playboy Mansion and some of the depravities that went on there during the 70s and 80s. So welcome, guys. It's so nice to have you.
Yes.
We have our copy here.
We have our copy too. So Stefan, what brought you to LA was filmmaking, correct?
Yes. Well, after the Slade, I was working for a producer interviewing Holocaust survivors in England because he wanted to make a documentary about them. And I had another job offer to come to LA. I came and he said he couldn't give me a job. So I had to find other means to work. So I studied jewelry making. And then I met Stella and we married and opened a store together. And we sold clothing and jewelry, my jewelry. And I got a job offer to work at the Playboy Mansion. And I started out as a butler. And there's many butlers working because Hefner had a 24-hour open kind of hotel situation. And after a year, I moved up to valet, which I took care of Hefner personally, his bedroom and all the places where he would spend time to make sure he had his supplies. And so I was able to observe his lifestyle and talk to many of, not the guests, because we weren't allowed to conversate with any of the guests. We were told to be polite, but do not try to make friends with any of his guests or even the women that were coming up there. So any conversations we had with the bunnies or his girlfriends had to be done very privately and secretly because of all the listening devices and cameras were there.
It's interesting that you say that because I heard or read that there was cameras and microphones everywhere. So there was a particular way that these girls had to report anything, which kind of stifled their voices a little bit, right? They really couldn't ask for help because of the microphones and all the cameras. Am I correct?
Well, they would be punished if they went to any authority. But Hefner hired LA cops to protect him and to monitor all the situations. He was very paranoid. He was a typical bully with money. And if you defied him in any way, for myself and any other staff, we would be fired. If we were caught talking to the girls.
They verbally threatened everybody? Was it that they threatened litigation? Was it that they threatened termination of your job? I'm just curious. When someone new who was employed anywhere in the corporation came through, did everyone have to sign a non-disclosure agreement? Which
yes, we
is
did.
Not uncommon nowadays with celebrities and their corporations.
Yes. Yes, we did.
It was a 10-year non-disclosure.
Wow.
Yeah.
Which included what? Just kind of like the highlights.
Well, just don't talk about what goes on within the four walls,
And so,
And
what was your what was your position? Because you also worked for Playboy. What was your position with them?
well, after Stefan was working there full time, they came to me and said, "Would you like to be a centerfold? Would you like to be a playmate? Would you like to join our, you know, corporation?" And I said, that's not my thing. I have no interest in that at all. And they said, "Well, how would you like to be a hostess, at the parties?" And I said, "Yeah, I could do that." It was basically, going to the front door and guiding people through the mansion and, that kind of thing. And anybody that needed something or they were lost because it was an enormous property. So that was kind of my job. It was only the big parties, the Midsummer Night's Dream party, New Year's Eve, Halloween, and any kind of big event. They had a lot of fundraisers for the ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment, and that was very big during the 70s because women's lib and also the marijuana initiative. So 40 years ago, that was really very, very progressive. And those kind of events were very interesting because you would meet a lot of political, like the governor and, people in that realm beyond the celebrities. And Hefner was very, very, he was an intellectual. He was really kind of nerdy in a way. And he got very lucky, he himself would tell you that. And I think being in that position, not really being an employee, like the day-to-day slugging it out 9 to 5.
Right.
I had a different kind of perspective. It was more like I could really see clearly because I wasn't in the politics of working there and all the rules. And it was really, really exciting because at that time, like you said, it was the top of, the empire, I called it. The plane, the bunnies, the clubs, the hotels, the casinos. It was really, really an incredible business.
Well, yeah, and it seemed like everybody wanted to be there, right? Everybody
Yeah.
wanted to go to the Playboy Mansion.
Everyone.
I remember I grew up in LA, and the Playboy Mansion was actually on my way to school every morning when I was in high school. So I drove by it, and I actually one time was actually on the grounds, not inside the house, because I had a friend who was working in the zoo there, and so she invited me to come on. I mean, it's an enormous property, and
Yes.
the having grown up in LA, it was always such a curiosity to me. I mean, I obviously had no other reason to be there. And also now reading everything, such a surprise, the depth of all the things that were going on. You look at the Hefner and you look at Playboy, and some of the stuff you're like, oh, well, I mean, are you really surprised that big parties were there, that people were having intercourse on the grounds? Like, that's not a surprise. But each of the series, there's so many different illegal activities that were going on, and that's what I'm having the hardest time coming to grips with, because even if you are legally bound to not say anything, if as a whistleblower, and I know the 70s and 80s was a little bit different than 2022, but as a whistleblower, you can still step up and say something to the authorities if there's actual illegal activity going on. And it's just amazing to me that with all the hundreds of people that were kind of retelling the similar stories, that not a single person was able to come forward.
No one believed any of it, honestly. And he had such power. I don't think people really understand in 2022 how powerful he was in the media. He could shut you down. He could take you out. A lot of people that we met, Stefan especially, because he was there 5 days a week. I personally knew of girls that we never saw them again. We never knew what happened to them. Their parents would actually come knocking on doors. Have you seen my daughter?
Wow.
That's how powerful. And honestly, it wasn't beneath them to make you disappear. And a lot of people were afraid of that. Those girls lived in fear.
Well,
A lot
yes.
of the bunnies, the playmates, the hierarchy, if they dared say anything, they would be blackballed, and actually some of them disappeared. And what does that mean? That means maybe somebody killed them. We don't know.
Well,
So
yeah.
people always say, "Oh, why didn't you step up? Why couldn't you say something?" A lot of those girls in the executive part of the business, they had bodyguards. They were so fearful. People really were just, they weren't believed. If you said 40 years ago that Bill Cosby was a rapist, do you think anybody would believe that?
They don't
Absolutely
believe
not.
partially people don't believe it now after all the
Yeah.
evidence. It's
Oh,
insane.
we've had
And I
we've
can
had
understand the fear, because if you have politicians and police and all these people that are buddies with Hef, you don't feel very protected. You don't feel like you're going to be protected if you speak
no.
out. It's quite the
Oh,
opposite. So, Stefan, you were on his Dale every day to day. You got to see everything. He had this little box supposedly, with drugs. Did you ever see that? Did you know what was in there? Did were It seems like I look back at some interviews that he used to do, and he looked, now that I look, he looked like he was tweaking. So it's very interesting. At the time, we were blinded to all this. You thought he was so charismatic and a revolutionary, and really what he was a predator. I mean, that's kind of, how do you see him now, having all this information, Stefan, and on a daily basis? Was he a revolutionary or was he a predator? What do you think?
He was both. He was both. He started out as a nerdy intellectual, putting the magazine together in a kitchen table with 4 other helpers. And then it evolved into a giant thing, but he still put the magazine together on his bed. He had sheets of butcher block paper, 250 sheets. He folded them in half, had industrial staples put in the middle, and he took the last month's issue of Playboy and he cut out all the advertisements and pasted them in. And he would put the magazine together and get it ready for publications in his bed, while he watched the videos of his sexual events from the day before or the week before shown on the screen above his bed, of all his sexual activities or his orgies. Mostly he watched when he had sexual activities in his bedroom. He mostly watched from a chair, a very comfortable chair, and smoked joints and drank his Pepsis and ate his
And
favorite.
videotaped all of it, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
So
he
where's
videotaped it all.
the videotape vault now? What happened
Yeah.
to that?
What is
happened to
your
that after
theory
he
on
died?
that? Yeah, what's your theory?
According to one of the employees, they had lawyers. Several of the stars, Tony Curtis, for one, sent a letter to his lawyer, from his lawyer, and said, I don't want these tapes out there. I'm really upset, because he would never tell anyone he was videotaping. It was totally in secret. And he had a extensive library of all these stars, which he would use as a, if you say anything about me, I'm going to let these out. And the girls were afraid. But according to Nikki, who was one of the workers, that they had taken them out on a boat and dumped them in the ocean. And
this is all rumor and
all
speculation.
Alleged.
Allegedly.
Is this
Nobody
Mickey
really,
Garcia you're referring
Mickey
to?
Garcia.
Yes.
I
Yes.
loved her. I love her.
She was great in the show.
She
She was very honest. She was right
honest.
on.
She was powerful.
And everything she said was true.
Very grounded.
A lot of people, they say, oh, well, why couldn't you do anything? Well, she was raped. A lot of those girls were raped. And, no one would believe it. And they were just shut down. You were either going to lose your job, and none of them could afford to lose their jobs. So, between Hefner having half the LAPD on his staff, retired cops, of course he had power downtown at Parker Center because, he was Hefner.
Right.
He was huge, and people didn't mess with him. And even in the literary world, those girls that published books, every one of those books, except for Holly Madison's book prior, 10 years before her, they were all shut down. Nobody was going to give them an interview. They weren't doing any press because everything was canceled because Hefner put the squeeze on them.
Right.
He was the publisher of that era. And everything that ever came out about Playboy at that time was always through his press, the Playboy press. If you look at any books, if you research it at all, everything was Hefner. Even the biography pics. Hold the phone.
So just curious, how did you guys make a graceful exit from the Playboy Corporation? Because you guys both disassociated with them well before Hefner passed away.
We actually moved on. We knew that there was no real progress going on in that house, and we knew that it would be important for us to establish our own careers. So we opened an art gallery in Manhattan Beach of our own, and Stefan went to work for an art gallery in Beverly Hills called Peterson's. At that time, they had very, very big art of Monet and Pissarro and all the big artists of the day. And we pretty much built up our business, working on our own, and we just bowed out. There was a point where it was just, we couldn't take it anymore. And Stefan had written a book, and we went about trying to publish it. And that was our exit. And we had a publisher, and Stefan, was very excited because here we are, we're going to be able to tell this story. We felt like somebody's got to believe this. And the publisher's legal department said, hey, you know what? After we've thought about this, we just can't go there. There's too many people, too many powerful people that you're talking about in the book. Now they're all passed away, except for one, Cosby. But the rest of them are dead.
How were you able to get it to print?
Well, when A&E came to Stefan 2 years ago now, they said, we understand that you work there and we'd like your perspective. And Stefan said, well, I wrote a book, and they were thrilled. So they said, we want to get this book published. The women producers, Alexander Dean, joined in trying to get this published because she felt really strongly that this story should be told, even though it was 40 years later. The truth had to be, put out there.
Right.
And we were shut down, for 40 years. We literally shelved the book, and they used the book for the series. A lot of the stories are in that book.
So I wanted to ask Stefan and also you, Stella, what is a pivotal point, maybe for you first, Stefan, something that I maybe is like sometimes we reach a breaking point or something really sticks with us. And later, is there anything that really affected you and maybe to this day still affects you? Is there a pivotal moment that you just can't get out of your head?
It was the degree of violence against women that Hefner allowed to happen by certain of his guests were so violent. Not only would they rape them, but they would beat them while they were raping them, which was mind-boggling to me because I didn't know that. I couldn't imagine them being excited while they were being so violent, but it seemed to arouse them more into a frenzy. I had never seen that type of thing or even imagined that could happen. And after so many incidents that these women had to go to the hospital And
Horrifying.
It's terrible.
the
It's like-
the bills from Cedar Sinai came in, and Hefner had so many conferences with his guests, these violent guests, telling them that it had to stop, but they would continue on with them until they almost were threatened to being banned.
So is this something that to this day still affects you? Is it still moments where you get like somehow it's still with you, right? After I would imagine after experiencing that, there's like almost seeing that there like a
PTSD.
yes, exactly.
Right.
Thank you, Stella.
Yeah, it's something that you really never forget. And, the problem too was there was such disregard. It was such a disposable world. The minute you hit 24 or 25, which I felt was young, you were already used up because the age that they would engage these girls was 17, 18. It was really like a factory. They would bring the girls in. They would say, you need a boob job, you need a nose job, you need your cheeks, you need your chin. I used to call it deep fried because they would have everything fake everything. And it was so sad. And there was very few girls that were really perfect. You know what I mean? Perfect. And so the pool of women, all of them were redone willingly because they were so desperate to be famous and to be on this ride. The overwhelming
Well, and the facade, because it was like
facade.
the facade. It was presented as this liberating, beautiful, free, and it was everything but that. This book,
Right.
can I have the book there, Dr. Brenner?
Sure.
Unfortunately, we could spend all day talking to you guys, and we'd probably love to have you guys back.
Well, we can sleep over.
Yes,
We can
it'd
talk.
be great to
There's
have
so
you
many-
guys
Not that far away.
in
We just put
studio.
our pajamas
Yes,
and talk to you before we go to bed.
I mean, there's
I love that. I
stories.
love that.
So before we were kind of running out of time, but before we go, I just wanted to say one thing. So we kind of joke that every guest that we have on this show there's some connection to me. That's why Elizabeth and I started doing this. And you and we've never met before, but we have one of my patients is kind of a family friend of yours, and that's kind of how this whole thing came about. It's not because I have a dark obsession with Playboy.
I had a dark obsession. I was watching it.
Although my brother
and reading the
my
book.
brother did have a magazine subscription when I was growing up. So
We all knew everybody or somebody that either worked there, posed there, went to a party there.
Yeah.
It's been
Yeah.
such a pleasure to have you guys again.
so interesting.
It's the Dark Secrets of Playboy. And Stefan and Stella, thank you so much for coming on the show. But before we wrap it up, where can our guests buy your book? And where can they get more information or your social media? Can you tell our listeners
Yeah.
where they can find you?
The handle on Instagram is Dark Secrets of Playboy, the Dark Secrets of Playboy, Stefan Tetenbaum. It's on Amazon Kindle, and you can order it through Walmart. You can order it through all the major bookstores. It went international, so it's literally.
That's my copy. Elizabeth's already trying to steal my
yeah.
copy.
I'm trying to steal his copy.
Okay, I'm going to send you one.
Oh, yes, that would be amazing. Thank you again, you
Thanks for
guys.
coming on, guys.
For coming
Our
on.
pleasure.
Thank
And
you
we got
very
through the
much.
technical issues.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the OR with Dr. Brenner. Make sure to subscribe, like, and follow so you don't miss any future episodes. In the meantime, hit me up on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Kevin Brenner MD and KevinBrennerMD.com.